My daughter woke me up at 5 a.m. to make her morning coffee and prepare breakfast. She called me the maid. So the next day I woke her up at 4 a.m. and prepared a little surprise breakfast that she will never forget. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you were listening in the comments. The pounding started somewhere inside a dream I'd already forgotten. 3 hard knocks, then 3 more, each one louder than the last. My eyes opened to darkness. The clock's green glow showed barely past 5. The knocking continued, not the polite tap of someone checking if you're awake, but the demanding hammer of someone who expects you to already be up. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, my body protesting. I'd been cooking until nearly 11 the night before. Coq au vin. Jane wanted it fancy, wanted it perfect for some photos she needed. My feet found the cold hardwood floor. "Dad, get up. I need coffee and breakfast now. I have an important meeting in an hour." Jane's voice came through the door, sharp as the knocking. I pulled on my robe and opened the door. She stood there in silk pajamas, the kind with hand-stitched seams that caught the hallway light like water. Her arms were crossed. Her expression held no apology. "Jane, I was cooking until late last night. Can this wait an hour?" Her eyes narrowed. "Dad, you live here for free. Do your job as the help, or find somewhere else to stay." The words hung in the air between us. You live here for free. The help. I stood there, my hand still on the doorknob, trying to understand what I'd just heard. This house, the one I'd bought in 1997 with my first real commission check. The one I'd refinanced to help Jane through her divorce. My house. But she'd already turned away, heading back to her room. The silk whispered against itself as she walked. I descended the stairs, my hand trailing the banister I'd sanded and refinished myself 15 years ago. In the living room, Corey sprawled across the couch, phone screen casting blue light on his face. He didn't look up, didn't acknowledge my presence, just scrolled, his thumb moving in endless circles. The kitchen lights hurt my eyes when I flipped the switch. I moved through the familiar choreography: eggs from the refrigerator, butter from the dish, coffee beans from the freezer. My hands knew the work without thought. Crack 3 eggs, whisk until the yellow runs smooth, heat the pan until a drop of water skitters across the surface. While the butter melted, I tried to remember when this started. Jane's voice echoed in my memory. Just 2 or 3 months until we get back on our feet. That was spring, 2 years back. She'd lost her apartment lease, something about the landlord selling the building, needed a place to stay. Temporary, she'd said. I'd offered immediately. She was my daughter. Of course she could stay. The omelet pan, the same one I'd used every morning for months now. Hundreds of times, maybe thousands. I'd stopped counting somewhere around the 6th month when thank you disappeared from Jane's vocabulary. I poured the eggs, watched them spread and bubble at the edges. Added mushrooms, cheese, fresh herbs from the garden I still maintained. Folded it perfectly. The way I'd learned from a cooking show I used to watch before my mornings became about serving breakfast before dawn. The coffee grinder screamed. I measured the grounds, started the machine. The smell filled the kitchen. Dark roast, the expensive kind Jane preferred. I'd picked it up yesterday, along with the organic cream she liked, the one that cost twice as much as regular. I plated the omelet with the precision I'd learned selling cars for 35 years. Presentation matters. Details matter. The garnish arranged just so, the toast cut on the diagonal, the coffee poured into her favorite mug. Jane came down exactly 1 hour after she'd pounded on my door. She'd showered, dressed in what she called her professional casual, another outfit that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. She sat at the table, pulled out her laptop, and started typing before her fingers even touched the fork. I stood by the counter, watching. She took a bite, still typing, then another. Her eyes never left the screen. No acknowledgement, no thank you. Not even a glance in my direction. "The eggs are overcooked. Try harder next time." She said it without looking up, without pausing in her typing. Just stated it as fact, the way you might mention the weather. I walked back upstairs, my legs heavier than they had been on the way down. In my peripheral vision, Corey still lay on the couch, scrolling. Still hadn't spoken, still hadn't moved except for that endless thumb motion. When I reached my bedroom, I closed the door behind me. Not a slam, just a quiet click of the latch catching. I sat on the edge of my bed and looked at my hands. They were steady. That surprised me. I expected them to shake, expected some visible sign of what had just fractured inside me. But they were steady, perfectly steady, and somewhere in my chest, something cold and clear was beginning to take shape. I climbed the stairs, feeling the carpet compress under each step. At the top, I closed my bedroom door, and the click of the latch sounded final. Absolute. I sat on the edge of my bed, the mattress sinking slightly under my weight. My hands still held warmth from cooking. Downstairs, Jane's keyboard clicked in rapid bursts, the important meeting, the one I'd been summoned to serve. I pulled my phone from the nightstand and opened the Notes app. Not to vent, not to complain, to calculate. 35 years selling cars had taught me one essential skill. Know the numbers. Always know exactly what you're dealing with. House value first. I'd refinanced 3 years ago when Jane's divorce got messy and she needed help with legal fees. The bank had appraised it at $485,000. I typed the number, watched it appear on the screen. Market rent next. I'd researched this when Jane first asked to stay. A house this size, in the Hawthorne district, close to downtown Portland. I'd seen comparable listings at $2,400 monthly, some higher. I was being conservative. I typed it in. Utilities, internet, water, gas, electric, garbage. I paid all of them, had for 2 years. Average monthly cost, $370. Another line in my notes, groceries. I did all the shopping, all the cooking, fed 3 adults, bought whatever Jane requested, organic this, specialty that. Averaged about $800 monthly. Another line. The math came easy. Addition I'd done thousands of times, calculating dealer costs and customer payments, profit margins and commission splits. $2,400 plus $370 plus $800. $3,570 monthly. Multiply by 24 months. $85,680. I stared at the number. Added property tax and insurance I'd continued paying, averaged annually, another $120 per month. Recalculated. $87,560. I set the phone down on my lap, picked it up again. The number hadn't changed. Jane's voice surfaced in my memory. Not from this morning, but from 2 years ago. Early spring, cherry blossoms were blooming in the park. She'd sat at my kitchen table, mascara smudged from crying. Just 2 or 3 months, Dad, until we get back on our feet. We really appreciate this. I remembered nodding, remembered saying, of course, take all the time you need. Remembered her hug, brief but genuine. That genuine hug had an expiration date I hadn't noticed. First week, she'd thank me for dinner. First month, she'd helped with dishes sometimes. 6th month, she'd started requesting specific meals. Can you make that salmon thing with the glaze? No, please. Just the expectation that I would. First year, she'd begun leaving her dirty dishes on the table for me to clear. Corey's too. I'd started finding their laundry in the bathroom, left for me to wash. Neither of them mentioned it. Neither of them asked. The tasks just appeared, and I performed them. Somewhere around month 15, Jane had started calling me from her room when she wanted something. Like I was staff. Like this wasn't my house, my kitchen, my washing machine. And this morning. Do your job as the help. I stood up from the bed and looked at my hands again. These hands had sold cars for 35 years. Hundreds of deals. Maybe thousands. I knew people. Knew how to read them. Knew when someone was negotiating in good faith and when they were just taking. There had been a customer once, maybe 15 years back, wanted a luxury sedan, demanded discount after discount, free oil changes, free detailing, free winter tires, free floor mats. Every time I agreed to something, he'd ask for more, never satisfied, never intending to be satisfied, just testing how much he could extract. My sales manager had pulled me aside after the 4th visit. Don't negotiate with people who don't respect you, Emile. They'll take everything and blame you for being empty. I'd walked away from that deal. The customer had gone to another dealership, probably done the same thing to them. But you can't walk away from family. Can you? Hours passed. Afternoon light slanted through my bedroom window. I'd been sitting there, thinking, not moving except to adjust my position when my back stiffened. Downstairs I heard Jane moving around, heard the refrigerator open and close. Dad, I'm hungry. Can you make that pasta thing with the mushrooms? And make enough for Corey. Her voice carried up the stairs, demanding, entitled. Before this morning, that tone would have sent me rushing down, apologetic for not anticipating her needs. Now, I felt something different, something cold, something clear. I walked downstairs, my footsteps deliberate on each step. Jane stood in the kitchen, phone in hand, scrolling. She glanced up when I entered. Something in my face made her pause mid-scroll. Her mouth opened, closed. Then she looked back at her phone. I pulled out the pasta, the mushrooms, the cream, started the water boiling, sliced the mushrooms with the precision I'd learned from years of watching cooking shows during rare free moments. My movements were exact, professional, but inside, I was planning. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, not tossing, not agonizing, just thinking. The house was silent except for the occasional creak of old wood settling. Through my wall, I heard Jane's television, some show with canned laughter. Deep into the night, the clock showed 3:30 when I finally sat up. The plan arrived complete. Not scattered pieces I'd have to assemble. Not a vague outline. A complete strategy, detailed and sequential, professional. 35 years of reading people, understanding leverage, structuring deals, knowing what customers valued, what they feared, what pressure made them sign on the dotted line. All of it, every skill I'd honed, suddenly focused on a single purpose. Not revenge, correction. Jane and Corey valued comfort, valued service, valued the appearance of success without the work required to maintain it. They feared inconvenience, feared exposure, feared having to actually function without someone managing every detail of their lives. The first step was clear, crystal clear. Show them what servitude actually feels like. Then document everything, then present the bill. I set my alarm for early, before dawn, then lay back down. For the first time in 2 years, maybe longer, I fell asleep with purpose instead of exhaustion. The alarm pulled me from sleep hours before dawn. Not jarring, I'd set it expecting the sound. I dressed in the darkness, movements deliberate, almost ceremonial. Slacks, button-down shirt, the same presentation clothes I'd worn for important car sales. This was important. I stood outside Jane and Corey's bedroom door, my hand raised. Inside, faint snoring. The house held that deep silence that comes only in the hours most people never see. I knocked, hard. 3 times, then 3 more. The same demanding rhythm Jane had used on my door. Silence, then rustling, then footsteps. The door opened. Jane stood there, hair tangled, eyes struggling to focus. She wore an old t-shirt, the expensive silk pajamas discarded somewhere. Her mouth opened to speak. "Good morning, help! Time to get up. I need breakfast ready in 2 hours. Omelet, bacon, pancakes, fruit salad. Important meeting today." I kept my voice cheerful, energetic. The tone of someone who expects immediate compliance. Jane blinked. "Dad, what the... It's 4 in the morning. Have you lost your mind?" "You're absolutely right, daughter. This is my house. And if the homeowner gets to demand service from those living here for free, today I'm exercising that right. Kitchen, now." Behind her, Corey sat up in bed, confused, shirtless, squinting at me. I didn't acknowledge him, kept my eyes on Jane. Her face shifted through confusion, then outrage, then something like understanding. "You can't be serious." "Kitchen," I repeated. "Now. You said I live here for free. Actually, you live here for free. So today, you're the help." The shift was palpable. Jane realized I meant every word. She descended the stairs, each step reluctant. I followed, settled into the chair where she usually sat, where she scrolled her phone while I served her. The kitchen lights hurt her eyes. I watched her squint, fumble for the coffee beans. "Let's start with coffee," I said, my voice pleasant. "You know how I like it. Strong, hot, none of that weak stuff." Jane moved to the coffee maker, her hands clumsy with sleep. She measured the grounds, filled the water reservoir. The machine began its familiar gurgle. While it brewed, she stood there, arms crossed, staring at the counter. "Eggs next," I said. "Omelet, mushrooms and cheese, the way I make yours. And I'll need bacon, crispy, not burnt." She pulled eggs from the refrigerator, her movements sharp, angry, cracked them into a bowl, whisked harder than necessary, the fork scraping against ceramic. The coffee finished. She poured it, brought it to me. I took a sip, set it down. "Bitter, make it again." "The coffee is fine. Make it again." Jane's jaw clenched. She took the cup back, dumped it down the sink, started over. This time she added less grounds, probably thinking I wanted it weaker. When she brought it back, I tasted it and shook my head. Now it's too weak. Third time. Get it right. Her hands trembled as she took the cup. Behind her, Corey appeared in the doorway, wearing sweatpants, his face twisted with anger. What the hell is wrong with you? It's the middle of the night and you're... Your wife established the house rules, I said, not looking at him. The owner makes demands, the people living for free serve. I'm just following her system. Corey opened his mouth, closed it, looked at Jane, who was making her third pot of coffee, her shoulders rigid. He retreated to the living room. Dawn began breaking outside the kitchen window. Gray light filtered through, making everything look cold. Jane had finally delivered acceptable coffee and was now working on the omelet. I watched her hands shake as she poured the eggs into the pan. Where's the bacon? I asked for bacon. I'm doing the omelet first. I want them together, hot, fresh. Start over and do the bacon simultaneously. She abandoned the half-cooked omelet, grabbed the bacon package, started laying strips in another pan. The eggs in the first pan began burning. She scrambled to remove them, salvage something, but it was too late. Those eggs are ruined, I observed. Completely inedible. Would you serve that to someone important? Start over. This is insane! Start over. Time stretched, the kitchen filled with the smell of burnt eggs and overcooked bacon. Jane's face had gone from outrage to exhaustion, her eyes red-rimmed. She'd restarted the omelet 3 times now. Each time, something went wrong. Too much salt, torn when folding, undercooked in the center. Where's the fruit salad? I asked. I'm still waiting. She pulled fruit from the refrigerator. Strawberries, grapes, cantaloupe. Her hands fumbled with the knife, cutting chunks too large, too uneven. She dumped them in a bowl, shoved it toward me. Presentation matters, I said. This looks sloppy. Like you don't care about the person you're serving. Jane's voice cracked. Why are you doing this? Why are you being cruel? I let the cheerfulness drop from my voice, looked at her directly. Now you know what I've felt 600 mornings in a row. Remember this feeling. I stood, picked up my car keys from the counter. The omelet she'd finally managed to complete sat on the table, adequate but imperfect. I hadn't touched it. Jane stood there trembling, not from cold, from exhaustion and fury and something else. Shame, maybe. Recognition. Her face crumpled, but whether from pain or rage, I couldn't tell and didn't care. I walked to the front door, opened it. The early morning air was cold, clean. Behind me, Jane's voice rose, something between a scream and a sob, but I couldn't make out the words. I got into my car, settled into the seat, started the engine. The dashboard clock showed just past 7. 2 hours. The same 2 hours she'd demanded of me countless times. As I pulled out of the driveway, I glanced back. The kitchen light was still on. Jane's silhouette stood motionless at the window. I shifted into drive and headed toward downtown, toward the glass office building where Michael Stevens worked. The personal lesson was complete. Now came the professional strategy. The morning traffic was light. I reached downtown before 8, found parking in a garage beneath the building. The elevator carried me to the 3rd floor, smooth and silent. The law office occupied the entire floor. Glass doors, tasteful gray carpet. A reception desk, where a woman in her 30s typed without looking up. Emil Porter, I said. 8:30 appointment. She nodded, gestured to the leather chairs along the wall. I sat beneath framed degrees and certificates, the kind of professional display that tells clients they're in capable hands. A coffee machine burbled in the corner. I'd had enough coffee for one day. I'd scheduled this consultation 4 days ago, the afternoon after my late-night calculation session, before the mirror incident this morning, before I'd fully formed the plan. I knew I'd need legal structure, professional guidance. 35 years in car sales taught me that emotion loses negotiations, documentation and leverage win them. A door opened. A man in his 40s appeared, wearing a pressed shirt but no tie, professional but not pretentious. Mr. Porter? I stood, followed him into his office. The room was efficient, desk stacked with organized files, window overlooking the city, law books lining one wall. Michael Stevens settled behind his desk, gestured for me to sit across from him. Thanks for seeing me, I said. You mentioned a tenant issue on the phone. Walk me through it. I explained the situation the way I'd pitch a car deal, Facts first, emotion removed, adult daughter and son-in-law, my house, 2 years of residence, no lease, no payment, no rental agreement, increasing demands for service, exploitation disguised as family assistance. Stevens took notes on a legal pad, his handwriting rapid and precise. He asked questions that surprised me with their specificity. Do they receive mail at your address? Yes. They changed their mailing address about 6 months in. Driver's licenses, updated to your address. Yes. Do they have keys to the house? Of course. I gave them keys when they moved in. Each yes made Stevens nod, not with approval, but with recognition. These details mattered in ways I was only beginning to understand. He set down his pen. Even without a lease, they've established legal residency. Oregon tenant law is very protective of occupants' rights. You can't change the locks or remove their belongings. That's illegal eviction, and they could sue you. I absorbed this. So, in my own house, I'm legally powerless to remove people who aren't paying and aren't welcome? Not powerless, but you must follow process, written notice. 30 days minimum in Oregon. If they refuse to leave after notice expires, you file for formal eviction through court. There's a hearing. If the judge rules in your favor, sheriff's deputies enforce the eviction. Timeline: 2 to 3 months minimum, possibly longer, if they contest. Cost: court filing fees run a few hundred. My fees depend on complexity, but typical eviction representation starts around $2,000. Could go higher if they fight hard. I nodded slowly. I'd expected difficulty, but this was more complex than I'd imagined. More expensive, more time-consuming. Stevens continued, his voice level. They could file harassment claims, try to get a restraining order preventing you from entering parts of your own house. They could claim you're creating a hostile environment. Adult children in these situations often weaponize family sympathy. What do I need to do? Document everything, video evidence of you performing household tasks while they issue orders. That establishes exploitation pattern. Written logs of all expenses you cover. Photographs of property condition in case they damage anything. Records of any threats or aggressive behavior. He leaned forward. I recommend installing a video doorbell. Creates timestamp records proving residency patterns and your consistent presence as homeowner. Also protects you if they claim you're never there, or that you've abandoned the property. I thought about the Ring doorbell I'd seen advertised. How much? Basic model runs about $180. Installation yourself is easy. Start recording today. Stevens turned to his computer, began typing. I'm drafting a formal notice right now. We'll give them 3 clear options. His fingers moved across the keyboard while he spoke. Option 1, sign a rental lease at $1,800 monthly. That includes utilities and shared household expenses, below market rate for your neighborhood, which demonstrates your reasonableness. Option 2, purchase half ownership of the house, based on current value, approximately $240,000. Puts them on the deed, makes them legally responsible for property taxes and maintenance. Most won't have that kind of capital, but offering it shows good faith. And option 3, vacate within 30 days. He paused, looked up from the screen. There's also what we call cash for keys. You offer them money to leave voluntarily, typically a few thousand. Avoids court battle, saves legal fees and months of stress, usually cheaper in the long run. I consider this pragmatically. A few thousand now versus months of attorney fees and emotional warfare. How much usually works? Depends on the situation. 3 to 5,000 is common. Some people go higher to speed things up. Stevens printed the document, handed it across the desk. The language was formal, precise, emotionless. 3 options, each explained clearly. 30-day deadline. Signature lines at the bottom. When you deliver this, Stevens said, expect escalation. Adult children often claim elder abuse, turn other family members against the parent, post on social media painting themselves as victims. Call police with false complaints. You need to protect yourself. How? Never be alone with them during confrontations. Have a witness present, friend, neighbor, even hire someone if necessary. Record all interactions. Oregon is one-party consent for recording, meaning you can record conversations without their knowledge. Maintain calm demeanor at all times. Your emotional outbursts help their case, not yours. Secure important documents, valuables, anything they could destroy or steal. People get destructive when cornered. He studied my face. Do you have backup housing if this gets ugly? Somewhere safe to stay? I hadn't considered that. I assumed I'd stay in my own house. Stevens shook his head. Sometimes tactical retreat is strategic. If things get violent or if they're damaging property, better to leave temporarily and let the legal process work. Don't give them ammunition by staying in a toxic environment. I folded the notice, slipped it into my jacket pocket. The paper felt heavier than it should. First step? I asked. Deliver the notice today. Their response tells us how hard this fight will be. Keep a copy for yourself. Have them sign acknowledging receipt if possible. Then we wait 30 days. If they don't choose an option, we file for eviction. I stood, shook his hand. Professional, firm. The handshake of two men who understood this was business, not family drama. One more thing, Stevens said. When they refuse, and they probably will, don't react emotionally. Don't argue. Just document their refusal and let me handle the rest. I left his office, rode the elevator down, walked through the parking garage to my car. The envelope with the formal notice sat in my jacket pocket. The weight of it felt like a loaded weapon. I sat in the driver's seat, engine off, holding the envelope. Outside, the city moved around me, people heading to work, traffic building, morning advancing. I knew what came next. Drive home, present the options, watch Jane and Corey react. The mirror lesson had been personal. This was legal, professional. The real war was about to begin. The following weeks transformed me into a documentarian of my own exploitation. The Ring doorbell, mounted beside my front door with 4 simple screws, became my silent witness. Every time Jane called from upstairs, every time Corey left dishes for me to clear, the camera recorded. My phone accumulated 47 videos. Each one showed the same pattern, them commanding, me complying. 2 weeks after meeting Stevens, I drove to a notary's office downtown. The woman behind the desk watched me sign 3 copies of the formal notice, pressed her seal into each one, added her signature. The embossed mark made it official, legal, binding. The sealed envelope sat on my passenger seat during the drive home. Spring afternoon light slanted through the windshield. Cherry blossoms lined the street, their petals scattered across sidewalks like confetti for a celebration no one was having. I entered my house. Jane sat at the dining table, laptop open, typing. Corey occupied the couch, phone glowing in his hands. Neither looked up. This was normal to them, me coming and going, invisible, irrelevant except when they needed something. I walked to the dining table and placed the envelope directly in front of Jane's keyboard. This is a formal 30-day notice regarding your residency in this property. Jane looked up, her expression shifting from irritation at the interruption to confusion. What? It's a legal document prepared by my attorney. You need to read it now, both of you. Corey finally paid attention, sitting up, setting his phone aside. Jane picked up the envelope, her fingers tearing the seal with more force than necessary. She unfolded the paper, her eyes scanned the text. I watched her face change, confusion becoming comprehension, becoming shock, becoming fury. You're evicting us? You're actually throwing your own daughter onto the street? My voice stayed level. Professional. I'm providing 3 options. Option 1, sign a rental lease. $1,800 monthly plus half the utilities. That's below market rate for this neighborhood. Jane's laugh was harsh, sharp. We can't afford that. Option 2, purchase 50% ownership of the house, $242,500. That makes you a co-owner, responsible for taxes and maintenance. Corey stood now, his body language aggressive, shoulders squared. That's insane. Where would we get that kind of money? I looked at him directly. Option 3, find alternative housing within 30 days. The room went silent except for the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of traffic outside. Corey tried a different approach. Intimidation. You know what this makes you look like? A cruel father abandoning family in need? I'll make sure everyone knows, your friends, your neighbors, social media. Everyone will see what kind of person you really are. I reached for my phone, opened the folder where the videos lived, turned the screen toward them. 47 thumbnails, each one showing them in my house, treating me like staff. I have 47 video recordings, you ordering me around, you calling me the help. You treating me like a servant in my own house. Tell whoever you want. I'll show them these. Jane stared at the phone screen, Her face lost color. She hadn't known, hadn't suspected I was documenting anything. She tried another tactic. Her voice softened, tears beginning to form. Dad, we're family. You're really going to choose property over your own daughter? I felt it. The pull of decades being her father. The instinct to comfort, to fix, to sacrifice. But then I remembered that word, help. The 600 mornings, the exhaustion and exploitation dressed up as family obligation. I'm choosing dignity over being exploited. There's a difference. The notice is served, 30 days. If you're still here after that, I file with the court. Your choice. I picked up my copy of the notice and walked toward my bedroom. Behind me, Jane's voice followed, cold now, the tears gone. You'll regret this. I closed my bedroom door, sat on my bed, listened to their voices through the wall, muffled, angry, planning something. Let them plan. I'd followed every legal requirement. Stevens had made sure of that. The days that followed transformed the house into hostile territory. Jane and Corey stopped all pretense of civility. They didn't speak to me except in clipped, necessary exchanges. Move. I need that. You're in my way. They occupied common spaces deliberately when I needed them. I wanted to make dinner. Jane sprawled across the kitchen table with papers everywhere. I wanted to watch evening news. Corey took over the living room television with violent video games, volume high. Jane cooked elaborate meals, pasta with expensive ingredients, roasted chicken, homemade desserts, and left the kitchen destroyed. Pots on the stove, pans on the counter, flour dusting every surface. She'd cook, eat, leave, walk past me without acknowledgement while I stared at the mess. Corey played music late at night, heavy bass that vibrated through the walls. When I knocked to ask him to lower it, he'd turn it down for 10 minutes, then raise it again. But they didn't leave, didn't acknowledge the deadline, didn't mention finding apartments or signing leases or purchasing ownership. They were calling my bluff, waiting for me to surrender, to say I didn't mean it, to beg them to stay and go back to the way things were. When the deadline arrived, 30 days exactly, I woke to find Jane's door still closed, Corey's car still in the driveway. The house was quiet, defiant in its stillness. I sat at my kitchen table with my coffee and picked up my phone, scrolled to Stevens' office number. The phone rang twice before the receptionist answered. Professional, efficient. Michael Stevens' office. This is Emil Porter. I need to speak with Mr. Stevens about filing the eviction. One moment, please. The hold music was classical, calm. I looked down the hallway toward their closed door. They thought they'd won by waiting me out. Thought I'd choose peace over principle, comfort over consequence. They were about to learn otherwise. Stevens confirmed the next steps during that phone call. The deadline had passed. Time for enforcement. Not illegal eviction, but strategic pressure. Legal pressure. The kind that forces adults to behave like adults. The next morning, I sat at my laptop in the kitchen, early light filtering through the window. I logged into the internet provider account. My name, my credit card, my contract. Navigated to service management. Clicked suspend service. The confirmation screen asked if I was sure. I clicked yes. The house Wi-Fi died. Within 15 minutes, Corey emerged from the bedroom, phone in hand, frustration evident in every movement. He jabbed at his screen, walked through different rooms checking for signal. Internet's down. I sipped my coffee, didn't look up from my newspaper. No, it's disconnected. That was my service contract. I canceled it. He stared. You can't do that. We need internet for work. You're welcome to set up your own service. The account options are available from any provider. Setup usually takes 3 to 5 business days. His face reddened. His mouth opened, closed. He wanted to argue, but couldn't find the angle. I returned to my newspaper. He stormed back to the bedroom. First pressure point applied. By midday, I'd made other changes. I installed a simple combination lock on the refrigerator. Not the whole thing, just the shelves containing my groceries. The eggs I bought, the cheese, the vegetables, the leftovers from my meals. I boxed up my pantry items, pasta, rice, canned goods, coffee, and moved them to my bedroom closet. Jane discovered this when looking for lunch ingredients. She found the lock, tried to open it, couldn't. She found me in the living room, reading. You locked the food? Are you serious right now? I didn't look up from my book. I locked my food. You're adults with income. Buy your own groceries. Her voice rose, sharp with disbelief. "This is cruelty! This is abuse!" I finally looked at her. "This is self-service. I'm not your cook or your provider anymore. You have jobs, you can feed yourselves." She opened her mouth to respond, but I'd already returned to my book. After a moment, she stormed away. That evening, I noticed the dirty dishes they left, their plates, their cups, their utensils scattered across the counter. I didn't touch them, didn't clean, didn't enable. As the first week passed, I drove to the Multnomah County Courthouse downtown. The building was imposing, stone steps, columns, the weight of law and order made physical, security screening, metal detector, my keys and phone in a plastic bin. I found the appropriate office on the second floor, clerk's window, forms on clipboards. I filled out the eviction paperwork. Fed, they called it. Forcible entry and detainer. The language was formal, impersonal, exactly what this situation needed. The clerk processed my filing fee. $121. She stamped the documents with practiced efficiency, provided me with a case number, explained the timeline. The court would schedule a hearing within 3 to 4 weeks. Jane and Corey would receive official service of the notice. A process server would deliver it personally. I took the receipt, folded it carefully, slipped it into my wallet. This was now public record, a court case. Case number 25CV-10847, real, undeniable. When I returned home, Corey was in the kitchen, scrolling through his phone, eating takeout from a restaurant container. I didn't mention the filing, let them discover it when the server knocked on the door. The next morning, I found my favorite mug shattered on the kitchen floor. Ceramic fragments spread across the tile. The mug had been a gift from my late wife, 20 years old. The design faded from countless washes, but irreplaceable. Corey stood nearby, phone out, pretending to text. "Oh, sorry, accident." His tone wasn't apologetic. It was smug, satisfied. My chest tightened. That mug was the one I'd used every morning for 2 decades. But I didn't react emotionally, didn't give him the satisfaction. I took out my phone, photographed the shattered pieces from multiple angles. Then I opened the Ring app, scrolled through the doorbell's recorded footage. There, time-stamped from 10 minutes ago. Corey walking to the counter, looking at the mug, deliberately sweeping it off with his hand. No accident. Pure spite. I saved the clip, looked up at him. "I have video of you deliberately breaking my property. I'm adding this to the court filing as evidence of destructive behavior." His smugness evaporated. He hadn't thought about the cameras. Late that week, my phone rang. Caller ID showed Linda, my late wife's sister, Jane's aunt. The woman who'd helped raise Jane after her mother died. Her voice was careful, measured. "Emile, Jane called me. She's very upset. She says you're trying to make them homeless." I'd anticipated this move. Jane recruiting family, weaponizing sympathy. "I understand she's upset. Would you like to hear my side? I'd like to come by tomorrow, see the situation myself. Tomorrow afternoon works. I'll be here." The next day, Linda arrived precisely at 2. She hugged Jane, listened to her tearful explanation. Cruel father, sudden eviction, nowhere to go, no warning. Jane performed well, tears streaming, voice breaking at strategic moments. "Can I speak with Emile privately?" Linda asked. In the kitchen, with the door closed, I showed her my phone, the videos, Jane ordering me around, calling me help. Corey ignoring me completely. The exploitation pattern documented across weeks. Then I showed her the financial calculations. $87,560 over 24 months. The formal notice with 3 reasonable options. Their refusal to choose any of them. Linda's face changed as she watched. The sympathy shifted, redirected. After she left, Jane waited in the living room, expectant, confident that her aunt would take her side, would convince me to stop this legal nonsense. Linda hugged her again, held her shoulders. "Honey, your father has been more than fair. You've had 2 years of free housing in a home worth $500,000. You need to find your own place." Jane's face crumbled, but not with sadness, with fury at the betrayal. Her final family ally had just switched sides. Linda left. Jane stood in the driveway, watching the car disappear. I observed from the kitchen window. When Jane turned back toward the house, her face no longer showed tears, just cold calculation. She walked past me without speaking. Down the hall. Her door closed with deliberate softness, more threatening than a slam. I picked up the courthouse receipt from the counter. Case number 25CV 90847. The hearing notice would arrive within days. The legal machinery was in motion, indifferent to emotion, responsive only to procedure. I moved to the calendar on the wall, marked nothing. The system would work on its own timeline. The hearing date finally arrived on a Tuesday morning as spring turned to summer. I drove downtown through familiar streets, found parking in the same garage I'd used when meeting Stevens the first time. The courthouse steps felt steeper than I remembered, or maybe the weight of what was coming made them feel that way. Stevens met me in the lobby, brief handshake. He wore a different tie than last time, navy with thin silver stripes, professional armor. "You have everything?" I patted the folder under my arm, bank statements, videos, the notarized notice, photographs of Corey's deliberate destruction, 2 years of exploitation reduced to organized tabs. The elevator took us to the 3rd floor. The hallway outside the courtroom had wooden benches, other people waiting for their cases, conversations in low voices. The institutional smell of old buildings, floor polish and recycled air, and the accumulated anxiety of thousands of disputes. We sat. Stevens reviewed key points quietly, his voice a murmur only I could hear. Down the hall, a door opened. Jane and Corey appeared, no attorney with them. Their faces were tight, stressed. Jane wore a conservative dress, probably chosen to look sympathetic. Corey had actually shaved, put on slacks and a button-down shirt, costumes for their performance. The bailiff called our case number. Stevens stood first. I followed him through the courtroom door. The room was smaller than I expected, not like courtroom dramas on television. No jury box, no gallery of spectators. Just wood paneling, the judge's bench elevated at the front, a court reporter at her station with her silent keyboard, fluorescent lights that made everything look slightly washed out. I took my seat at the plaintiff's table. Stevens settled beside me, opening his briefcase with practiced economy. Across the aisle, Jane and Corey sat at the defendant's table, the empty chair beside them, conspicuous in its absence of legal representation. "All rise." The judge entered. A woman in her 50s, reading glasses on a chain around her neck, expression neutral and professional. She settled into her chair, reviewed the file before her briefly. "This is a forcible entry and detainer action. Porter versus Porter, Hunter and Hunter." She looked up. "Mr. Porter, you're represented by counsel. Defendants, you're appearing pro se?" Jane nodded. Her confidence from the hallway had already started cracking. The judge gestured toward Jane. "Mrs. Hunter, you may present your position." Jane stood. Her voice wavered exactly the right amount. Practiced vulnerability. "Your Honor, this is my father. We've been living in his house for 2 years because we needed help after a difficult period. Now he's trying to throw us out, his own family, onto the streets with nowhere to go." Her voice broke convincingly. Beside her, Corey added his part. "We're not causing any problems. We're just trying to survive. Family should help family." The judge listened without visible reaction, took notes with a pen that made small scratching sounds on paper. I watched Jane perform, the same manipulation she'd used on me for 24 months. But courtrooms don't run on emotion. They run on evidence. "Counselor?" The judge turned to Stevens. He stood, calm and methodical. When he spoke, his voice carried professional authority without arrogance. "Your Honor, the respondents claim family hardship, but the evidence tells a different story. No rental agreement exists between the parties. No payment of any kind has been made." He slid Emil's bank records across to the clerk, who passed them to the judge. Mr. Porter provided formal written notice with 3 reasonable alternatives: market rate rental agreement, option to purchase partial ownership, or voluntary departure. The notice was properly served and notarized. He entered the notice as evidence. The judge examined it, the notary seal visible even from where I sat. The notice was ignored. The respondents refused to vacate, refused to pay rent, refused to negotiate in good faith. Then the videos. Stevens had selected 3 clips, loaded them onto a thumb drive the court reporter inserted into the display system. The screen on the wall flickered to life. First clip, Jane calling from upstairs, her voice sharp. "Dad, I need breakfast. Make that omelet thing with the mushrooms." The camera showed me climbing the stairs, exhausted. Second clip, Jane gesturing around the living room, phone to her ear, talking to someone. Yeah, my place is perfect for that. Plenty of room? My house. She called it her place. Third clip, me serving dinner. Corey sprawled on the couch, not acknowledging me, not saying thank you, just taking the plate and returning his attention to his phone. The judge watched. Her expression shifted subtly, not dramatic, but present. She saw what I'd lived. Stevens continued. The Ring doorbell footage. Corey approaching the counter, looking at my late wife's mug, deliberately sweeping it to the floor. The ceramic shattering, his satisfied expression as he walked away. The respondents have damaged Mr. Porter's property and created a hostile living environment. Stevens presented the financial calculation. Over 24 months, Mr. Porter has provided free housing, utilities, and food totaling $87,560. The respondents have contributed nothing and refused reasonable options to regularize their occupancy. The judge removed her glasses, looked directly at Jane and Corey. The court finds clear establishment of residency without legal agreement, no payment of rent or contribution to household expenses, and willful refusal to vacate after proper notice was given. Her voice was firm, authoritative. Mr. Porter has demonstrated extraordinary patience and more than reasonable accommodation. She turned to me briefly, something like acknowledgement in her eyes. Then back to Jane and Corey. The defendants will vacate the property no later than June 30th, or the sheriff will execute a writ of restitution and forcibly remove you and your possessions. This hearing is concluded. The gavel fell. The sound was final, absolute. Jane's face crumpled. She opened her mouth to speak, but the judge was already gathering papers, already moving to the next case. Corey stood frozen, the reality settling over him. Stevens gathered his documents efficiently. Clean victory, he murmured. We left through the side door. In the hallway, Jane stood against the wall, crying. Real tears this time, not performed ones. Corey stood beside her, his face blank with shock. I walked past them toward the elevator. Didn't stop, didn't gloat. Just walked. The legal system had spoken. The rest was execution. That evening, when I returned home, the house felt different. Still occupied, but legally mine again. The judge's words had shifted something fundamental in the air. Jane emerged from her room for dinner, silent, eyes red from crying. I prepared my own meal, pasta, simple, just for one. She stood in the kitchen doorway, watching. The silence stretched between us like a physical thing. I spoke casually, not looking at her. I met with my estate attorney last week, updating my will. Jane's head snapped up. After a lot of thought, I've decided the house will go to the Homeless Shelter Foundation when I die. They do good work, people who truly need help. Jane went pale. What? I looked at her then. You know, after you called me the help, I realized money is better given to people who actually need it, not people who demand it as entitlement. Her voice came out barely a whisper. You're cutting me out completely? I shrugged, returned to stirring my pasta. I'm giving it to people who will appreciate it. You made it clear you just wanted the asset, not a relationship. Her face showed the calculation crumbling. She'd endured all this, the notice, the court, the humiliation, partly counting on the inheritance. The house would eventually be hers. She could wait me out. Now, even that was gone. The deadline approached like weather, inevitable, visible from a distance, growing closer each day. 5 days remained before the sheriff's scheduled arrival. Since the court ruling, the house had existed in limbo. Jane and Corey moved between denial and frantic apartment searching, making calls, scrolling rental listings, finding nothing they could afford in their suddenly compressed timeline. I observed their panic with detachment. I'd arranged one final option, the cash for keys Stevens had mentioned months ago in his office. Not generosity, pragmatism. $8,000 to end this cleanly was cheaper than sheriff eviction, potential property damage during forced removal, the spectacle of their belongings on my lawn for neighbors to witness. The envelope sat on the coffee table. Inside, a check and a one-page release agreement. I called them into the living room. They sat on the couch, wary. Jane's eyes went to the envelope immediately. I kept my tone businesslike. I have a final offer, $8,000 for you to vacate peacefully by the deadline. You leave the house clean, no damage, and sign this document waiving any future claims against me or the property. I slid the envelope across the table. Corey opened it. His eyes scanned the check, the legal language below. Jane stared at the number written in my careful handwriting. $8,000? Her voice rose with disbelief. This house is worth $500,000. You're offering us $8,000? I nodded. The house is mine. $8,000 covers first month's rent and deposit on a new place. It's assistance, not compensation. Corey recovered some composure, trying to negotiate. Make it $20,000 and we'll go tomorrow. Clean break, no problems. $8,000, that's the offer. Jane's voice sharpened. You have all this money, all this property, and you'll only give us $8,000? We're your family. Family doesn't call each other the help. Family doesn't exploit each other for 2 years while contributing nothing. $8,000 is more than generous, given you owe me over $87,000. This isn't negotiable. Corey's jaw tightened. He exchanged a look with Jane. She was calculating. I could see it in the way her eyes moved, the slight tension around her mouth. They wanted more. They always wanted more. But time and options were running out. Jane played her final card. Her voice hardened, the victim performance abandoned. Fine. Refuse to help your own daughter. I'll make sure everyone knows. Social media, the neighbors, everyone will know what kind of father you are. Abandoning family, choosing money over blood. She'd threatened this before. But now desperation leaked through the threat, making it less effective, more hollow. I reached for my phone, opened the video folder, turned the screen toward them. 63 videos now, you ordering me around, calling me a servant, treating me like property. Post whatever you want. I'll post these. Who do you think people will sympathize with? The elderly father exploited in his own home, or the adult daughter who freeloaded for 2 years? The videos played in sequence on the small screen, their voices, their faces, their entitled demands preserved in digital clarity. Jane stared at the screen, her final weapon neutralized. Corey looked at the check, at Jane, calculating odds. He was the pragmatist. 8,000 was better than zero, better than the sheriff's arrival, the public humiliation, starting from nothing. But Jane's pride was wounded, bleeding. Keep your money. She stood, her movement abrupt. We don't need your charity. She walked toward her bedroom. Corey hesitated a moment, looking at the check on the table, then followed her. I didn't call them back, didn't try to convince them. I returned the envelope to my desk drawer. They'd chosen pride over pragmatism. The sheriff would execute the eviction order exactly as scheduled. I texted Stevens. They declined the offer, proceed with writ execution. His response arrived within minutes. Confirmed. Sheriff scheduled for the 30th, 9 a.m. The remaining days crawled by in cold silence. The house held its breath. I noticed increasing activity. Boxes appearing in the hallway, closet doors standing open, drawers emptied of their contents. Jane and Corey were packing, but slowly, grudgingly, as if moving in slow motion could delay the inevitable. The night before the sheriff's arrival, I lay in bed listening to movement downstairs. Footsteps. The sounds of hasty packing suddenly accelerated, drawers opening and closing. Voices, Jane's urgent and muffled, Corey responding in sharp whispers. A door slammed, then silence, then more footsteps. I got up, moved to my bedroom window. Their car sat in the driveway, trunk open, boxes and bags crammed into the back seat. As I watched, Corey emerged from the house carrying more. A lamp, a garbage bag stuffed with what looked like clothes. More trips followed. Jane appeared with hangers of dresses. Corey with a monitor and computer tower. They moved with frantic efficiency, loading everything that would fit. Near midnight, the sounds finally stopped. I waited, listening. The house had gone still. I got up again, checked. Their bedroom door stood open. I looked inside. The room was empty, bed stripped, closet open and bare, drawers pulled out and abandoned. They'd taken the essentials, clothes, electronics, personal items, left behind the furniture, some boxes still packed, the detritus of their 2-year occupation. They'd left in darkness, avoiding the morning, avoiding the shame of sheriff's deputies executing an eviction order, the neighbors watching, the public nature of legal consequences. The house was mine again. Finally, completely. I returned to bed but didn't sleep immediately. Lay there in the silence, the unfamiliar peace of an empty house. No tension in the air, no hostile presence down the hall, just space. My space. When dawn came, I got up and made coffee. Just one cup. Stood in the kitchen watching light filter through the window. The calendar on the wall showed June 30th circled in red. Today. The day the sheriff would have arrived. I heard a vehicle outside, looked through the window, their car returning. Jane got out, moved quickly toward the house, not looking up. Coming back for another load. The departure was happening in stages, messy and incomplete. I went downstairs to make breakfast. Behind me, I heard the front door open. Footsteps in the hallway. Jane had come back inside. We were in the house together, this liminal moment between occupation and departure. She in the hallway gathering the last of her belongings. Me in the kitchen making eggs for one. Neither of us spoke. The silence held everything. 2 years of accumulated grievance, the dissolution of family pretense, the raw economics of property and law. She would leave. I would stay. It was almost finished. The morning the sheriff was scheduled to arrive, I lay awake in my bed, listening to movement downstairs. I hadn't slept well. Too much noise through the night. Too much awareness that this was the final day, the end of months of calculated pressure and legal maneuvering. As dawn broke, pale light filtered through my window. The sounds continued. Footsteps, the scrape of boxes being shifted, car doors opening and closing. They were still loading. The sheriff was scheduled to arrive in a few hours, but it appeared they'd be gone before that happened. I sat up, considered going down to make coffee, decided to wait until they finished leaving. Then I heard something different. A sharp cry, a crash, then terrible silence. I moved fast. Downstairs before conscious thought, pure instinct, pure adrenaline carrying me. The scene registered in fragments. Jane on the floor at the base of the staircase, boxes scattered around her, one corner dented where it had hit the wall. She was on her side, her leg twisted at a wrong angle, blood running from a cut on her forehead where she'd struck the edge of the bottom step. Her eyes were open but unfocused, trying to orient herself. Corey stood frozen at the top of the stairs, box still in his hands, his face white as paper. I dropped to my knees beside Jane. All the anger, the cold strategy, the months of calculated pressure, the documentation and court filings and economic warfare, gone, vanished. This was my daughter, the girl I'd taught to ride a bicycle, who'd fallen asleep on my shoulder during long car rides when she was small, who I'd loved for 36 years. Call 911 now. My voice cut through Corey's shock. He fumbled with his phone, nearly dropped it. I assessed Jane, basic first aid my late wife had insisted I learn decades ago, when she was still alive and nursing and determined I'd know how to help in emergencies. Jane was breathing, conscious, if confused. The head wound bled heavily, but head wounds always did. Her ankle was already swelling, visible even through her sock. Jane, stay still. Don't move your head. She tried to speak. Words came out slurred, disconnected, possible concussion. I grabbed a clean kitchen towel from the counter, applied gentle pressure to the forehead wound. My hands were steady despite the fear coursing through me, despite the terrible what-ifs flooding my mind. Corey's voice in the background, shaking. We need an ambulance. My wife fell down the stairs. She hit her head. There's blood. He gave the address, his words tumbling over each other. The wait felt eternal. Minutes stretched impossibly long. I kept talking to Jane, keeping her alert, keeping her present. Stay with me. Look at my eyes. What's your name? Tell me what day it is. She answered, sometimes correctly, sometimes confused. Thursday. No, Wednesday. Her name. My name. Yes, she knew where she was. Corey had come downstairs, hovering uselessly nearby, his hands opening and closing without purpose. Then, sirens. Approaching, stopping outside. I opened the front door before they could knock. 2 paramedics entered with equipment, professional and swift. I stepped back, let them work. They assessed her quickly. Probable sprained ankle, laceration to forehead requiring stitches, possible mild concussion, need to transport for evaluation and imaging to rule out fracture or more serious head trauma. They stabilized her neck as precaution, loaded her onto a stretcher with practiced efficiency. Jane's eyes found mine as they lifted her. She looked terrified and small, nothing like the woman who'd called me the help months ago. Nothing like the entitled daughter who demanded breakfast before dawn. Dad! Her voice was a child's voice. I'm following right behind you, I told her. I rode in my own car, following the ambulance through city streets. They ran red lights. I followed in their wake. The hospital complex appeared. Legacy Emmanuel Medical Center, large and modern. The emergency entrance already busy despite the early hour. I parked in the visitor lot, hurried inside. The ER waiting area. Plastic chairs, outdated magazines scattered across small tables. The smell of antiseptic and anxiety thick in the recycled air. Corey arrived moments later, having locked the house. We sat without speaking, two men who'd been adversaries now united in worry. A nurse eventually called us back. Jane was in an examination room, awake, being evaluated. The doctor was young, efficient, explaining in clear terms. Definitely sprained ankle, definitely concussion, mild, thankfully. 5 stitches for the forehead laceration. They needed to keep her for observation for several hours, standard protocol for head injuries. She was lucky, no fracture, no severe trauma. The bill would be substantial. The ambulance alone would run over $1,000, but that didn't matter. They let me see her. Jane lay in the hospital bed, white bandage stark against her forehead, ankle wrapped and elevated, IV in her arm delivering fluids. She looked at me when I entered, and tears started. Not angry tears, not manipulative tears. Something else entirely. Shame, recognition, understanding. Dad, Her voice broke. I sat in the chair beside the bed, reached for her hand without thinking, without planning. She was my daughter, and she'd been hurt, and that was all that mattered in this moment. Everything else, the eviction, the court case, the 2 years of exploitation, receded to background noise. She gripped my hand like she was drowning. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The words tumbled out between tears. I treated you horribly. I was awful. I was so awful to you. My throat tightened. I squeezed her hand. Corey stood in the doorway, and for the first time in 2 years, he looked genuinely human, scared, ashamed, present. Jane's tears slowed. Corey stepped further into the room, instead of hovering at the threshold. The IV drip counted seconds with soft clicks. Hospital sounds filtered through the door, distant voices, equipment beeping, footsteps passing. Jane's voice came quieter now, tired from crying and medication and fear. When can I go home? I realized she didn't have a clear home anymore. They were being evicted today. Their belongings were half loaded in their car. They had nowhere to go. I looked at my daughter, bandaged, vulnerable, finally, genuinely remorseful, and felt something fundamental shift inside me. The strategy was over. The war was done. Whatever came next would be different. By afternoon, the doctor cleared Jane for release. After several hours of observation, her vitals remained stable. Her confusion had cleared, the concussion symptoms mild enough for home care. The discharge nurse provided instructions. Rest, ice for the ankle, watch for worsening headache or nausea, follow up in 1 week. She wheeled Jane to the exit, hospital policy, even though Jane could hobble with help. I brought my car to the pickup area. Corey loaded Jane's few belongings, her purse, the clothes she'd been wearing, now in a plastic bag. As I helped Jane into the passenger seat, careful of her ankle, Corey asked the question hovering unspoken between us. Where should we go? Their apartment search hadn't produced results. Their belongings were still at my house. The sheriff never came. I'd called and canceled the eviction execution this morning from the hospital waiting room. I didn't answer immediately, focused on settling Jane, adjusting her seatbelt so it didn't press on the bandage. Then, the house. You're coming back to the house. The drive was quiet. Jane dozed against the window, pain medication making her drowsy. I navigated familiar streets, returned to the neighborhood, pulled into my driveway. The house looked the same, boxes still visible through windows, evidence of interrupted moving, frozen mid-departure. I helped Jane inside, Corey supporting her other side. We settled her on the living room couch, pillows under her ankle, blanket across her lap. I brought ice wrapped in a towel for the swelling. Once Jane was situated, Corey started to speak, probably to ask about logistics, about how long this arrangement would last. But I raised a hand. 2 weeks, no charge, while Jane recovers. After that, we'll discuss what comes next. Corey's expression showed relief and uncertainty mixed together. Jane, half asleep, murmured something that might have been, "Thank you." In the days that followed, the house settled into strange new rhythms, quieter, more respectful. Jane, confined to the couch with her injuries, had time to think. I noticed she watched me differently now, not calculating what she could extract, not entitled to my service, but observant in a new way. On the third evening, I brought her tea. She was sitting up, bandage changed to a smaller one, ankle less swollen than before. "Dad, sit with me?" I settled in the armchair. Jane's voice was quiet, careful. "After Mom died, I felt like the world owed me something, like I deserved compensation for the loss. And you were there, and you were kind, and I just took advantage, made you the target for everything I was angry about." Corey joined us. He sat on the floor near the couch, an unconsciously submissive position, nothing like his previous sprawling entitlement across my furniture. "I got comfortable," he admitted. "Everything was easy, free. I stopped trying, stopped being a real adult. I let it make me worse." I listened without interrupting. This was what I'd wanted, not just for them to leave, but to understand what they'd done. Jane continued, her voice thick with emotion. "You weren't cruel, Dad. You showed me what I was doing to you. That early morning, making me serve you breakfast, I finally felt what you felt every day for 2 years. Being powerless, being used." Her voice cracked. "I'm ashamed. I'm so ashamed of who I became." My response was measured, not angry. "I love you, Jane. I've loved you since the moment you were born. But love doesn't mean accepting exploitation. Love doesn't mean letting someone treat you like property." I paused, choosing words carefully. "You called me the help in my own house. You took my kindness and twisted it into servitude. I had to show you, not to hurt you, but because you wouldn't have understood any other way." Jane nodded, tears on her cheeks again. "I didn't enjoy any of it," I continued. "The legal process, the pressure tactics, none of it gave me satisfaction. But I needed my dignity back, and you needed to learn that family doesn't mean unlimited access to someone's resources and patience." By mid-July, when Jane could walk without help, they were ready to leave. I had helped them find an apartment, modest, in Gresham, affordable on their combined income. $1,650 monthly, they could manage it themselves. The day they moved, I helped carry boxes despite Corey's protests that he could manage. The atmosphere was different, no hostility, no resentment, something resembling respect. Once they were settled in the new place, a pattern emerged. Jane called weekly, asked if she could visit. Sometimes we had dinner together, casual, comfortable. I cooked, but now they helped. Now they thanked me. Now they brought wine or dessert or flowers for the table. As summer wound down, Jane visited for coffee one morning in late August. We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where she'd once scrolled her phone while I served her breakfast without acknowledgement. "I understand now why Mom loved you so much," she said. "You're kind, but you're not weak. You know the difference." I smiled, the first genuine smile in months. Something warm and real that hadn't been available to me during the Cold War, during the strategy and documentation and legal maneuvering. "I just protected my dignity," I said. "Everyone should do that." Jane smiled back, reached across the table to squeeze my hand. Outside the kitchen window, morning light filtered through the trees in my yard. 2 coffee cups sat between us. The house was peaceful. The relationship was rebuilt on healthy terms. I'd won everything that mattered, not just the legal victory, but the personal one. My daughter understood. My home was mine. My dignity was intact. And the love, which had never truly died, had found its way back through boundaries and consequences and the hard work of real change. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.